The Madhouse energy absolutely left its mark on the drivers, but what about the fans? What are your thoughts on the Cookout Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium? Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, it's Taylor Kitchen and welcome back to Above the Yellow Line on the ATYL Media channel, where we're doing motorsports media your way, and on this show we talk about NASCAR all the time. Make sure to turn on the notification bell so you know when we post, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. I don't like admitting when I'm wrong, I really don't, but quite honestly I misjudged this entire event at Bowman Gray Stadium going into it. I didn't have a lot of hope for it. But quickly, as the heats were going on, it completely changed my entire outlook on the Cookout Clash. We're going to get into my thoughts and even your thoughts in a few minutes, but let's go through the results of the heats, the last chance qualifying event, and of course, the main event itself. Heat number 1 was won by Chase Elliott, while Heat 2 was won by Chris Buescher because they won their respective heats. They started on the front row for the Cookout Clash. Denny Hamlin won Heat 3, while Tyler Reddick won Heat 4. So with the top 5 drivers in each heat advancing to the main event, that meant we had a last chance qualifying race to cover. There were some heavy hitters in that last chance qualifier, like Kyle Larson and Ryan Blaney, the driver second in points during the 2024 season. So fortunately for Ryan Blaney, even if he couldn't race his way in with the last chance qualifying race, he had the provisional, being that driver that was best in points for the 2024 season that had yet to lock himself in to the Cookout Clash. So regardless, he was going to be fine, and they had to make some changes to the car anyways before the last chance qualifying race. So they just ran as many laps as they could and then just took the provisional, which heck, that was really smart. This meant that heavy hitter Kyle Larson had to race his way into the event, and of course, he won the last chance qualifying race. He started like mid-pack in this event, and he was able to work his way towards the front aggressively and took advantage of some drivers that were a little too aggressive themselves, but nevertheless, that 5 made it into the main race. And so did Josh Berry, very aggressive during this race, but he got that number 21 into the big show, which very good for Josh Berry with his first full-time season with Wood Brothers Racing. Awesome to see that throwback car make it into the Clash. Like I said, the last chance qualifying race was incredibly aggressive. We saw Austin Dillon and Ty Dillon battling back and forth for position. Don't think they had to battle that hard when they did, but they did, and it left the door open for drivers like Kyle Larson and Josh Berry and more to make their way towards the front. And believe it or not, we saw some tempers flare during the events this weekend. Most notably, we had a car go airborne due to retaliation. Justin Haley made contact with Ty Gibbs' car. There was a caution that came out, and Ty Gibbs was not too happy about the contact that was put his way. Therefore, as he was headed to the garage area, he gave Justin Haley's car a little bit of a tap, and that little bit of a tap turned into a lot, and it got Gibbs' car airborne. After the race, Ty Gibbs said, hey, he didn't mean for that contact to be that aggressive, but it happened. Tempers flare. It's what happens at the Madhouse. It's what happens at short tracks, period. So from all the chaos from the heats, the last chance qualifying event, we kind of felt like we were going to be in for a good show for the actual 200 lap main event, and I actually don't think it disappointed. I would say by comparison, and rightfully so, the start of Sunday's main event was pretty tame, but these drivers are having to survive an entire 200 laps at the Madhouse, so I will let that pass with a grain of salt. So we get into the main event, and after fending off Denny Hamlin for about the entire race and Ryan Blaney for half the race, Chase Elliott captured his first Clash win from the pole. Chase Elliott becomes the 26th different driver to win the Clash, and with his win under the Hendrick Motorsports banner, Hendrick Motorsports now ties Richard Childress Racing with 8 Clash wins, the second most of all teams, the first being Joe Gibbs Racing with 12 Clash wins. And if you want one more stat with this win, I will throw one your way. Chase Elliott becomes the driver to lead the most laps in Clash history with a total laps led of 171. Like I said, Denny Hamlin and Ryan Blaney did not make this win easy for that number 9 car. And considering that Ryan Blaney had to start this race at the tail end of the field from the provisional and then worked his way up to the top 10 by the halfway point of this race, that was pretty impressive. Ryan Blaney had a rocket of a car, and we're very familiar with hearing this phrase when it comes to the short tracks and Ryan Blaney in that 12 team. Unfortunately, though, the 12 team did not have enough to fend off Chase Elliott, so therefore we have the Elliott win. And with this win for Chase Elliott, this is the energy I want to see from him consistently. This is the energy we need to see from him consistently. I really did enjoy seeing his excitement for racing at this track and winning this race because by Elliott's standards, this was a pretty animated celebration for him. And when NASCAR's most popular driver has a very animated celebration and speaks very highly of racing at this track and the excitement that this event brought, it fuels the sport. I mean, the crowd was going nuts. They were ecstatic that Chase Elliott had won at the Madhouse. So a great way to kick off the 2025 season with Chase Elliott in victory lane. And hopefully that means good things to come for this number 9 team, because I know the 2024 season didn't go the way they wanted. Yes, they had a win at Texas Motor Speedway, and yes, they were overall a very consistent team. However, I know they would have loved to have added more wins to their stats. But in the short term, I really do think when Chase Elliott wins, it is a win for the sport. When Chase Elliott is very animated, excited about something, and voicing his opinions, not only do the fans listen, but NASCAR listens, and his excitement and enthusiasm for racing at Bowman Gray, I hope carries some weight, as well as what the other drivers are saying. The other drivers loved racing at this event. Ryan Blaney, finishing this race second, voiced that he liked racing here. It was really fun. You heard Ryan Preece throughout the weekend saying how cool it was to be at this track, a track that he has frequented in his career. So not only does what Elliott says and his reaction to winning this event carry some weight, but I hope the win carries some momentum for that 9 team, hoping to pick out this season strong. We've seen Joey Logano win the Clash in 2022, then go on to win the championship. A long-term goal, maybe that's something that the 9 team can achieve this year. So that's a long-term goal there, right? Winning the Clash and then going on to win the title, that is a season-long endeavor. Let's think of this short-term. The last time an Elliott won the Clash, they went on to win the Daytona 500. That's Bill Elliott in 1987. So could Chase Elliott do the same this year? We don't know. He's gotten very close. I think back to the 2021 Daytona 500 where it was by mere feet. He lost the Great American Race to Michael McDowell when that caution came out. So Elliott's been close. He's been in a position to win the Daytona 500 before. Could this be the year? Could he do what his dad did in 1987, win the Clash and then win the 500? Time will tell. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about the rest of the field, some key players in their finishing positions. First off, Shane Van Gisbergen, a top 10 in the first race of his full-time Cup Series career. Very impressive, surviving the Madhouse. Finally, RFK got all of their cars into the main event, which was awesome to see. Chris Buescher was the only one to finish inside the top 10, but right outside the top 10 and 11th was Ryan Preece. Overall, a good start for him in that 60 car, showed great aggression and great speed in that entry. Unfortunately, when there is good for some teams, there is bad for some others. Though Kyle Larson made his way into the main event by winning the last chance qualifying event, they just did not unload the car right from the get-go, and here we are with him having to race his way in. The Clash did not treat him well, spun multiple times, got involved in multiple incidents, and unfortunately did not end the Clash on a high note. And unfortunately, it was a tough weekend for another Kyle in the field, Kyle Busch, who was, I feel like, tossed around back and forth between other cars this entire weekend, from getting into it in the heats with Justin Haley to just in the main event. Just frustrating for Kyle Busch. So didn't start their year off on a high note, but again, it's the Clash, it's a non-points paying race. Hopefully that was just for fun, maybe some frustration, and you go into the Daytona 500 ready to go. Overall, though, for the Clash, this was pretty entertaining. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm gonna eat my words. I did not have the highest expectations or hopes for this event at Bowman Gray, but it exceeded every expectation I had. And for some of you, that was the same sentiment I got. Several of you really liked this event. Several of you said it exceeded your expectations. Some wished that it was on a Saturday night. Some wished that it was still at Daytona. And I totally get all of that. But for the product that we got at Bowman Gray, I think we consider this a win. I know some of you might agree, but I do think we got a good balance between aggressive and chaotic racing and just flat out great racing. I thought the balance there was pretty good. I didn't think it was too messy or chaotic. I thought it was a really good balance as opposed to what we've had in years past. It wasn't too boring. I thought the Clash at LA kind of became a snooze fest for some of it. This I didn't feel like had that. Besides the actual racing itself, you talk about the track too. The exit of turn 4, where a piece of that safer barrier and that wall jet out, like basically onto the track because of where the grandstands are, that proved to be an interesting challenge for these drivers, and it was really fun to see them try to navigate that, or fail to navigate that, in the instance of William Byron, who scraped the wall in the Clash, or other drivers throughout the weekend who just failed to make stuff happen around that part of the track, or just hit that part of the wall, period. And overall, I do think the racing that we got here was a positive sign for the racing to come at the short tracks. I think NASCAR's made fantastic improvements on the short track package. Hopefully it will get better in time this season, but I think this was a really good start. But that's enough of my thoughts for right now. I want to get back to your thoughts. There was one comment that I really wanted to hone in on, and that was the idea that we should be going back to Daytona for the Clash. And I hear you, and I do agree with you. I do think that's a pretty good idea. I feel like it's a good kind of ramp up to the main event, the Daytona 500, the Great American Race. So I understand that. I also know that those races can get chaotic and messy and junk a lot of great equipment and leave these teams out a lot of money. That said, if we can't go back to Daytona for the Clash, if that's just not in the cards, then I do think bringing the Clash to a historical track like Bowman Gray is 100% the move. Bringing the Clash to a place like Bowman Gray or keeping the Clash at a place like Bowman Gray gives something to the core NASCAR audience or the older NASCAR audience, kind of similar to what we did with like going back to North Wilkesboro and what that brought those that have watched the sport for a long time. Basically the same thing. On a negative though, as we keep the Clash at these kind of legacy tracks out towards the eastern part of the country, we're not giving a lot of love to our NASCAR fans out west, which for me, living on the East Coast, I'm like happy that we have more races out here, but for them, they only have like 2 or 3 a year at this point, which I do hate for them, 2, 3, or 4, because I know we go to some tracks twice. So hate that for them. Positive for us on the East Coast. But again, I would like to see some more races out west, even if it's a street course, just to give them some more love over there. And yes, even though I do think we should keep the Clash at a legacy type track like Bowman Gray, there was a huge benefit in bringing NASCAR to the LA Coliseum, bringing NASCAR to a new audience, exposing a new audience to the sport that we know and love. So the hope is that we take what we learned from the success of Bowman Gray, we take what we learned from the success of going to North Wilkesboro for the All-Star race, and we apply it to events going forward. There were some successes with the LA Coliseum, the Clash at the Coliseum. I really do think there were. We take what we learned from that and move it forward. I will say though, for the Clash this year, very glad there was not a musical guest in the middle of the race. I thought that was a positive. So yes, hopefully NASCAR does take what they learned and move forward with that. And I bring that up because according to Adam Stern, NASCAR is looking at potentially moving the Clash to Brazil in 2026. Now, to some of you, you're like, what the heck? Why would we do this? Well, NASCAR does have a Brazil racing series, so it would tie things in really well together. For Daniel Suarez, he did an interview with NASCAR last year when he raced in the Brazil series for a one-off event and said, quote, "I feel like there's so much opportunity. The sport of NASCAR is very big, and some people, I don't think, have really realized that, and I had the opportunity to see that in Brazil. I have known that for many years in Mexico, and I'm really excited that NASCAR is thinking outside the box." In that same article, NASCAR's chief international officer said he has 3 focuses. One is creating stars in these international series, the NASCAR Canada series, the NASCAR Mexico series, the NASCAR Brazil series, creating stars in those respective series. The second mission is to create a path for these drivers who want to advance their career to the big leagues and to the United States, creating a path for them to follow their dreams into the NASCAR Cup Series. And the final mission of his is taking NASCAR outside of the United States, and by bringing them to Brazil for the Clash in 2026, potentially, that seems to tie a lot of those initiatives together. And listen, I'm not opposed to bringing NASCAR to international markets. I actually think that's a really good thing considering how much motorsports has expanded in popularity worldwide. But I think in the case of a race in Brazil, I'd like to see it as an added exhibition race during the season. Where in the season, I don't know because our schedule is grueling, but I don't know if I want it to be where the Clash is on the schedule or if I want it to be the Clash itself. And part of that is I just don't want to see a track like Bowman Gray kicked off the schedule for us to go somewhere different because I really do like Bowman Gray a lot. But I also think about the cost for these teams. A lot of teams and a lot of drivers or a lot of people could argue that the cost we would have to take these cars, take these teams to Brazil could be used on more practice sessions, could be used on more testing. And I completely get that. A lot of people could argue too that we're putting a lot of money and effort into revitalizing some of these short tracks or creating some of our short tracks, hence the LA Coliseum, and really revitalizing racing in those areas in the United States. That's a good use for the money that we would use to maybe travel internationally. So there's several different arguments you can make financially about the pros and cons of going internationally. But ultimately, I think it's kind of time to stretch our wings a little bit. So just some food for thought for you all to end this episode of Above the Yellow Line. I know it was a little bit wordier than I typically am, but there was a lot of thoughts going into this event. And again, I will admit I ate my words and this event was actually pretty cool. So overall, I'm going to give the Cookout Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium a 70% absolutely above the yellow line. So what did you think of the Cookout Clash? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, make sure to visit AboveTheYellowLine.com to learn more about us and to help support our incredible team of content creators at ATYL Media. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and make sure to follow our channel. Thank you all so much for the support. And until next time, I'll see ya. Bye.